That simple symbol for your zodiac sign connects you to a story over 2,000 years old. By the end of this journey, you will know the true ancient origins of your sign, tracing it back to its very first creators. We are going to uncover why an entire system of human personality was mapped onto the stars and how it survived empires, scientific revolutions, and the passage of millennia. What secret meanings did the Babylonians hide in the constellations, and why did they choose exactly 12 signs? The answers lie buried in ancient clay tablets and forgotten temples. What part of this ancient cosmic story feels like it was written just for you? The zodiac is that celestial highway the sun appears to travel across the sky throughout the year. Picture a wide, circular belt wrapped around our entire planet, with the sun, moon, and planets all moving along this single, central path. This is the ecliptic, the sun's apparent journey through the stars from our viewpoint on Earth. Ancient astronomers noticed that the sun passed in front of a specific set of star patterns, and they divided this belt into 12 equal slices, each 30 degrees wide. They named each section after the prominent constellation that once occupied that space, giving us the 12 signs from Aries to Pisces. But here is where a crucial split occurs, a fork in the road that defines modern astrology. The sidereal zodiac, used in systems like Vedic astrology, sticks to the actual, current positions of those constellations against the backdrop of space. The tropical zodiac, which most Western horoscopes use, made a different choice. Around 2,000 years ago, it locked the starting point, the first day of spring, to the constellation Aries. Because of a slow wobble in Earth's rotation called precession, the constellations have gradually drifted from their original positions. So while the tropical zodiac remains tied to our seasons, the sidereal zodiac follows the stars themselves. This means your sun sign in a Western horoscope is a seasonal marker, a symbolic echo of a sky that has since shifted. Why did our ancestors choose these 12 constellations and not others? The story of that selection is a mystery written in clay and stone. Long before written history, our ancestors gazed upward with a practical need. The stars were not just points of light, they were a vast, reliable clock and compass painted across the night sky. For nomadic tribes, tracking the movement of constellations was a matter of survival. It told them when herds would migrate for the hunt, when the bitter cold would arrive, and most importantly, when the seasons would turn for planting and harvest. This was humanity's first foray into astronomy, a deep, observational science born from the essential rhythms of life on Earth. We can still find echoes of their cosmic understanding etched into the landscape. At sites like G Cyrillakleta, 4E7B Tepe in Turkey, a temple complex built over 11,000 years ago, massive stone pillars are arranged in precise circles. Some researchers propose these rings align with the positions of certain stars, particularly Sirius and the Pleiades cluster, suggesting the builders were marking celestial events. These are not just piles of rock, they are a prehistoric observatory, a permanent record of a people who understood the sky's cycles with astonishing depth. Imagine the patience it took to note a star's slow drift over generations, to encode that knowledge into stone for those who would follow. This was the foundational layer, the first human impulse to find order and meaning in the heavens. So when did this practical stargazing evolve into the symbolic stories that would become the zodiac? The answer lies with a civilization that took these celestial observations and built an entire cosmic bureaucracy around them. The dusty plains of Mesopotamia gave rise to the world's first cities, and with them, the world's first professional stargazers. Here, along the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerian people looked up and saw something far more than a farmer's almanac in the stars. They saw the handwriting of the gods. For them, the celestial bodies were not inanimate objects, they were living deities. The moon was the god Nana, the sun was Utu, and the bright planet we call Venus was the goddess Inanna. Every movement, every eclipse, every unusual alignment was a direct message from these divine powers, a celestial omen foretelling the fate of kings and the fortunes of entire empires. This belief transformed stargazing from a practical chore into a sacred science. Scribes, who were both priests and scholars, began meticulously recording these celestial events on clay tablets, creating the first detailed astronomical diaries. They noted the precise paths of planets, the timing of lunar cycles, and the ominous appearance of comets. A lunar eclipse might be interpreted as a sign of a king's impending illness, while the steady march of Jupiter through a specific constellation could signal a coming military victory. This practice of reading celestial omens was the crucial bridge. It was the moment humanity stopped just observing the sky's patterns and started interpreting them as a narrative, a story written in light about the divine will shaping human affairs. The entire system was built on a fundamental principle that what happened in the heavens was a direct precursor to what would happen on Earth. But how did this collection of individual omens evolve into the organized 12-part zodiac we recognize today? That revolutionary leap required a new level of mathematical genius. The Babylonian priests took this sacred science of omens and refined it into something resembling a cosmic bureaucracy. They inherited the Sumerian celestial traditions and over centuries began to impose a new order upon the chaos of the stars. Their greatest innovation was the creation of a standardized celestial map, a system that would allow them to track divine messages with unprecedented precision. This was not just about watching for omens anymore, it was about creating a predictable mathematical framework for the entire sky. The proof of their work survives on clay tablets known as the MUL.APIN series, named for their opening words. These tablets, copied and recopied for centuries, are some of the oldest known astronomical handbooks in the world. They list the names of stars and constellations, record the rising and setting times of celestial bodies, and even lay out a primitive star calendar for farmers. It is a breathtakingly comprehensive document, a user's manual for the entire Mesopotamian cosmos. But the most fascinating detail lies in how they divided the sun's path. The Babylonians did not start with the 12 signs we know. Their original zodiac was far more crowded, a system of 18 constellations that the sun passed through over the course of the year. This celestial road was wider and less defined. We can still see the echoes of this older system in some of the constellations that did not make the final cut, like the Hired Man and the Stars, figures that were eventually absorbed or discarded. So why did the Babylonian astronomers, masters of celestial order, decide to simplify their map of the heavens? What was the compelling reason to collapse 18 constellations into 12? The answer lies not in the stars themselves, but in the mathematics of time. The shift from 18 constellations to the classic 12 was a deliberate act of cosmic simplification. Babylonian mathematicians who worked in a base 60 system that still influences our clocks and circles today sought a more elegant harmony between the sky and their calendar. They observed that the moon cycled through its phases roughly 12 times in one solar year. This created a powerful numerical symmetry, 12 lunar cycles fitting neatly within the sun's annual journey. By dividing the sun's path, the ecliptic, into 12 equal slices of 30 degrees each, they forged a perfect marriage between the calendar and the cosmos. This new, streamlined zodiac was not just a map of the stars, it was a celestial timekeeping device. We can see the evidence of their sophisticated calculations etched into ancient clay. The Venus tablet of Ophiuchus, for instance, records the movements of the planet Venus over a 21-year period during the reign of King Ophiuchus. These are not vague observations, they are precise astronomical data, demonstrating an ability to predict planetary behavior with remarkable accuracy. This was the final evolution, the moment the system transformed from a collection of random omens into a structured, predictive tool. The zodiac was no longer just about reading the gods' moods, it was about forecasting their actions according to a predictable mathematical schedule. But this newly organized sky was still a blank slate, a grid waiting for its stories. Who decided that one slice of the sky should be a ram and another a pair of fish? The personalities of the constellations emerged from an even older layer of human imagination. These celestial slices needed names, and the Babylonians found them in the very essence of their culture, their gods, and their epic myths. The zodiac became a stage where their most powerful deities played out their cosmic dramas. The constellation of Leo was not merely a lion, it was the Great Lion, a symbol of terrifying royal power often linked to their legendary hero king Gilgamesh. In their great epic, Gilgamesh fought lions and wore their skins as a sign of his strength, and so the stars of Leo immortalized that raw, untamed courage in the sky. Then there are the twins, Gemini. To us, they are Castor and Pollux, but to the Babylonians, they were the twin gods Lugalgara and Meslamtia. These were formidable underworld deities, often depicted with double-headed axes, who stood guard at the gates of the afterlife. Placing them in the heavens as twins reflected their dual nature and their eternal, watchful presence. Even the seemingly humble crab of Cancer has a violent origin story. It was the giant crab sent by the primordial sea goddess Tiamat to distract the great god Marduk in his epic battle for the creation of the world. Though Marduk crushed the crab underfoot, its celestial placement was a permanent reminder of its role in that foundational cosmic war. Each sign was a piece of their cultural memory, a divine archetype projected onto the stars for safekeeping. But this Babylonian sky was a closed system, a sacred map for their priests and kings alone. So how did these very specific Mesopotamian myths travel across continents to become the familiar symbols we know today? The journey required a cultural translator, a civilization that would absorb this knowledge and spread it to the world. The conquests of Alexander the Great shattered old boundaries, creating a vast new world where ideas could travel as swiftly as his armies. When his forces swept through the Mesopotamian heartland, they did not just capture territory, they captured knowledge. Greek scholars who had long speculated about the nature of the cosmos with philosophical elegance were suddenly presented with the Babylonians' meticulous, data-rich celestial science. It was a meeting of two completely different mindsets, one that asked why the universe worked, and another that had spent centuries recording exactly how it moved. The Greeks were captivated. They eagerly absorbed this treasure trove of astronomical observations, recognizing its immense power. But they did not simply copy the Babylonian star charts, they transformed them. The Greek mind sought narratives and underlying principles, and they began to merge the raw data with their own rich tapestry of gods and heroes. The Babylonian underworld twins, Lugalgara and Meslamtia, were reimagined as the famous twin brothers Castor and Pollux, the constellation Gemini. The great lion of Mesopotamia became the Nemean lion, a beast slain by the hero Heracles, now immortalized as the sign Leo. This was more than a translation of words, it was a translation of culture, a profound fusion of Eastern observation and Western mythology. The epicenter of this intellectual revolution was the city of Alexandria in Egypt. Its legendary library became the engine of this synthesis, a place where scholars from across the known world gathered to debate, translate, and compile all human knowledge. Here, in its vast scriptoriums, Babylonian clay tablets were studied alongside Greek philosophical texts. Astronomers like Ophiuchus used centuries of Babylonian eclipse records to make his own groundbreaking discoveries, including the precession of the equinoxes. This was the final, crucial step that cemented the hybrid system. The Greeks took the Babylonian zodiac and infused it with their own philosophical framework, creating a system that was not just about predicting events for kings, but about exploring the relationship between the macrocosm of the heavens and the microcosm of the individual human soul. The stars were no longer just writing messages for empires, they were now thought to hold a mirror to every person's fate. How did this deeply personal form of astrology, born in the halls of Alexandria, then conquer the imagination of another empire that would spread it to the far corners of Europe? In the bustling intellectual heart of 2nd century Alexandria, a scholar named Claudius Ptolemy was about to single-handedly define astrology for the next 2,000 years. He was a man of immense and varied genius, mapping the stars in his Almagest and the earth in his geography. But his most enduring legacy for our story was a quieter, more philosophical work he titled the Tetrabiblos, meaning 4 books. This was not a collection of new discoveries, but something arguably more powerful, a grand synthesis. Ptolemy took the sprawling, often contradictory traditions of Babylonian omen lore and Greek cosmic philosophy and wove them into a single, coherent, and logical system. He presented the zodiac not as a chaotic list of omens, but as a rational science of influences, a way to understand how the celestial environment shaped life on Earth. In the Tetrabiblos, each of the 12 signs received its own detailed personality profile, a set of inherent qualities and tendencies. Aries was hot and dry, associated with initiative and a fiery spirit. Taurus was cold and dry, linked to stability and stubborn persistence. These were not just random assignments, they were part of a logical framework that connected each sign to specific elements, planets, and parts of the human body. What made the Tetrabiblos so revolutionary was its tone of calm authority. Ptolemy argued that while astronomy could tell you where a planet was, astrology, as he systematized it, could tell you what its presence meant. He created a user's manual for the cosmos, one that was so comprehensive and well-argued that it became the undisputed textbook. For centuries, any scholar in Europe or the Islamic world who wished to study the stars would begin with Ptolemy. His work ensured that the specific 12-sign zodiac, with all its intricate Greek Babylonian symbolism, was not lost to history but was instead copied, translated, and propagated across continents. It was the bedrock, the solid foundation upon which all later Western astrology would be built. But a system this powerful, once codified and set loose upon the world, was bound to face its greatest challenge not from rival philosophers but from an empire with a very different god. Rome's legions did more than conquer territory, they conquered the imagination. As the Republic expanded and became an empire, it voraciously absorbed the culture of the Greeks it had subdued. Greek tutors educated the children of the Roman elite. Greek philosophy filled their libraries, and with it came the entire system of Greek astrology, a ready-made cosmic science. The Romans, ever practical, saw the immense value in a system that could offer divine insight and predict future events. They did not reinvent the zodiac, they simply gave it a Latin translation. The Greek god of war, Ares, became Mars, and the love goddess Aphrodite was renamed Venus. The core meanings of the signs and planets remained almost perfectly intact, but now they resonated with the names of the very gods who watched over Rome itself. This was not a loss of meaning, but a transfer of power, cloaking a Greek intellectual system in the authority of the Roman pantheon. This Romanized zodiac then traveled on the empire's legendary roads and sailed on its merchant ships, carried by soldiers, administrators, and traders from the deserts of Syria to the misty highlands of Britain. It was an ideological export as powerful as Roman law or architecture. In every new province, local people encountered this complex celestial framework. They began to see their own fates reflected in the movements of planets named Jupiter and Saturn, and their own personalities in the archetype of the scorpion or the archer. The system was flexible enough to be woven into local folk traditions, creating unique regional blends of belief. A farmer in Gaul might still honor his local deities, but he would also know that the position of Mars at his birth could influence his temperament. Astrology became a universal language under the Roman banner, a shared cosmic story that connected a citizen in Rome to a settler on the Danube. It survived the empire's eventual political collapse because it had already rooted itself not just in scholarly texts, but in the daily lives and popular thought of an entire continent. The framework was now unshakable, but its greatest trial was yet to come, a confrontation with a new, monolithic faith that viewed the stars not as influences but as creations. While Ptolemy was codifying the zodiac in Alexandria, the very ground beneath that city held secrets of a much older sky. The Egyptians had been mapping the heavens for millennia, building a cosmic science entirely their own. Their astronomy was not born from omens for kings, but from a profound obsession with order, cycles, and the journey to the afterlife. They saw the sky as a divine, mechanical clockwork, and they built their entire civilization in its image. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the ultimate testament to this, its sides aligned with near-perfect precision to the 4 cardinal points of the compass. Its narrow internal shafts point directly toward the pole star and the belt of Orion, creating a stone machine designed to channel the soul of the pharaoh directly to the stars. This was not guesswork, it was the product of centuries of meticulous observation, a science in service of eternity. Their calendar, a brilliant 365-day solar year, was so accurate it formed the basis for our own. But their most unique contribution to timekeeping was the system of decans. These were 36 small constellations or individual stars that rose consecutively on the horizon just before dawn, each marking a new 10-day week. Through the night, the rising of each decan group told the time like the hands of a celestial clock. This was a parallel path, a different way of slicing the sky that was deeply practical and deeply Egyptian. So, did these 2 great civilizations, Mesopotamia and Egypt, ever share their celestial discoveries? The evidence is subtle, like a whisper across the desert. There are tantalizing clues of indirect contact. The Babylonian symbol for the constellation we call Libra, the scales, was originally seen as the claws of the scorpion. It was the Egyptians who seemed to have first revered the scales as a powerful symbol of divine judgment, weighing the heart of the deceased against the feather of truth. Could this Egyptian concept have traveled east, influencing the Babylonians to eventually separate the scales into their own sign? It is a compelling possibility. The more likely scenario, however, is one of parallel evolution. Both cultures were looking at the same sky, driven by the same human need to find order and meaning. They simply asked different questions of the stars. The Babylonians asked what the gods were planning, while the Egyptians asked how to build a civilization and an afterlife in harmony with the universe's eternal rhythms. When the Greeks later entered Egypt, they found this vast repository of astronomical wisdom and folded it into their own synthesis alongside the Babylonian data. So the zodiac we inherited is not a purely Mesopotamian product, but a grand fusion. It carries within it the omen lore of Babylon, the heroic myths of Greece, and the timeless cyclical order of Egypt. This ancient system survived its greatest trial when a new faith rose to power, one that taught the stars were mere creations, not divine influences. How could a pagan cosmic map possibly endure in a world dominated by a single, all-powerful god? This question of the 13th constellation touches on a fascinating rift between ancient symbolism and modern astronomy. The sun's path does indeed pass through a large constellation named Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, for about 18 days each year, nestled between Scorpio and Sagittarius. From a purely astronomical perspective, there are not 12 constellations along the ecliptic but 13. So why did the Babylonians, those master cosmic cartographers, deliberately leave it out? Their choice was not an oversight but a profound act of celestial organization. Their primary goal was to create a clean, symmetrical system that mirrored their base 60 mathematics and their 12-month lunar calendar. Dividing the 360-degree circle of the sky into 12 equal 30-degree segments created a perfect, manageable harmony. Ophiuchus, despite its size, simply did not fit neatly into this predefined grid. Its stars straddled the ecliptic, but its symbolic weight in their culture was not strong enough to disrupt the elegant numerical and calendrical symmetry they had engineered. The 12-sign zodiac was a man-made system of time, imposed upon the sky for human understanding, but the sky itself has never been static. That slow wobble in Earth rotation, the precession of the equinoxes, means the entire backdrop of the stars has drifted over the centuries. When the Babylonians fixed their zodiac over 2,000 years ago, the sun was positioned in front of the constellation Aries on the first day of spring. Today, due to precession, the sun on the spring equinox actually rises in the constellation Pisces and is slowly moving toward Aquarius. This means the symbolic dates of the tropical zodiac no longer align with the actual constellations they were named after. Your Taurus horoscope arrives while the sun is technically passing through the stars of Aries. This is not a flaw in the system, but rather a testament to its endurance. The zodiac we use locked in a seasonal snapshot of the sky from 2 millennia past, a symbolic calendar that has remained constant even as the cosmos continues its slow, majestic dance. So the next time someone asks why Ophiuchus is not a sign, you can tell them it is a story of numbers, of time, and of an ancient choice to find a beautiful, lasting order in the splendid chaos of the stars. This ancient belief system rested on a single, profound principle that the universe was a single, living organism. The grand motions of the stars and planets, the macrocosm, were not separate from the small world of human lives, the microcosm. They were reflections of each other, bound by an invisible harmonic resonance. The phrase "as above, so below" captures this perfectly. A storm in the heavens could foreshadow a war on Earth. The steady, reliable orbit of Saturn was thought to impart discipline and structure to human affairs, while the swift, unpredictable Mercury influenced thought and communication. This was not seen as magic, but as a natural law, as logical as gravity. It provided a complete framework for understanding everything, from an individual's temperament to the rise and fall of empires. Why was a person born under Mars often bold and confrontational? Because they entered the world when the cosmic environment was charged with the qualities of the war god, an imprint stamped upon their soul. This idea made astrology a serious and respected discipline, a sister science to medicine, philosophy, and astronomy itself. A physician would consult a star chart to determine the best time for a bloodletting, believing the moon's phase influenced the body's humors. A king would delay a coronation if Mars was in a threatening aspect, fearing it would curse his reign. The cosmos was a text to be read, and the astrologer was its most skilled interpreter. This worldview offered something incredibly powerful, a sense of order in a chaotic world. It placed every human life, every historical event within a vast, predictable, and meaningful cosmic story. But if the stars truly dictated our every move, where did that leave human freedom? This very question would become the system's most enduring and intimate dilemma. A stone ceiling in Egypt holds the entire story in one carved map. Deep within the temple of Hathor at Dendera, a massive bas-relief was discovered by Napoleon's expedition in the late 1700s, a stunning circular chart of the night sky now known as the Dendera Zodiac. It is not a purely Egyptian sky. There, carved in stone, you see the familiar figures of the Babylonian Greek zodiac, a ram, a bull, twins, all arranged in their classic circle. But they share the space with utterly Egyptian icons. The constellation we know as Orion is shown as the god Osiris sailing in his celestial boat, while Sirius is the goddess Isis. This artifact is a physical snapshot of cultural fusion, a hybrid sky where Greco-Babylonian symbols were absorbed and recontextualized into the ancient Egyptian cosmic order. It proves the zodiac was not a static set of symbols, but a living system that could be adopted and adapted, its meaning shifting to fit the spiritual landscape of a new culture. This synthesis was not confined to temple ceilings. For evidence of how deeply the zodiac had penetrated everyday consciousness, we need only look at the loose change in a Roman citizen's pocket. Roman emperors frequently minted coins stamped with zodiac symbols, a brilliant piece of mass propaganda. A coin bearing the image of Capricorn might celebrate the Emperor Augustus, who adopted the sea goat as his personal celestial emblem, linking his rule to the stabilizing power of Saturn, the planet that ruled that sign. This was astrology in the service of the state, a way to broadcast a message of divine favor and cosmic legitimacy to every person in the empire, from senators to slaves. The symbols were so universally recognized that they needed no explanation. They had become a visual shorthand for destiny, power, and the ordered cycles of time, etched not only in stone but in the very currency of daily life. While the Roman Empire was minting coins with zodiac symbols, those same celestial ideas were traveling in the opposite direction, carried eastward on the greatest network of exchange the ancient world had ever known. The Silk Road was far more than a route for silk and spices. It was a highway for the mind where astronomy and astrology were precious portable commodities. Alongside bolts of cloth and sacks of pepper, merchants and monks carried star charts and cosmic concepts from the bustling markets of the Middle East all the way to the imperial courts of China and the scholarly centers of India. This was not a one-way street. As Greek Babylonian astrology moved east, it encountered ancient, sophisticated systems that had been watching the very same stars and developing their own completely independent patterns. The human impulse to map the heavens was a global phenomenon, emerging in isolation yet arriving at strangely similar conclusions. Perhaps the most famous parallel system is the Chinese zodiac. Instead of a 12-month cycle tied to the sun's path, the Chinese developed a 12-year cycle, with each year represented by a different animal from the rat to the boar. The origins of this system are shrouded in legend, often involving a great race called by the Jade Emperor. The qualities assigned to each animal, like the cleverness of the rat or the diligence of the ox, function much like the personality archetypes of the Western signs, offering a framework for understanding human nature and destiny. Yet the philosophy behind it is deeply rooted in Chinese thought, incorporating concepts of yin and yang and the five elements, creating a cyclical view of time that feels entirely distinct from the linear, seasonal march of the Western zodiac. Meanwhile, in India, Vedic astrology was developing with its own profound complexity. It shares a common ancestor with the Western system, drawing from the same Mesopotamian wellspring. But while Western astrology later fixed its zodiac to the seasons, Vedic astrology remained faithful to the actual, observable stars using the sidereal zodiac. This means that in the Vedic system, your sun sign is likely different from your Western one, because it accounts for that slow precession of the equinoxes that Ptolemy knew about but chose to ignore for his seasonal calendar. Vedic astrology, or Jyotish, is interwoven with Hindu mythology and philosophy, viewing the birth chart as a map of one's karma and spiritual potential. It is a system of breathtaking depth, used for centuries to guide everything from the timing of weddings to major life decisions. So why do we see this recurring pattern of 12? From Babylon to China, the number 12 held a powerful, almost universal resonance. It perfectly divides the cycles of the moon and the sun, the four seasons, and the directions of space. It seems that across the ancient world, human minds independently recognized this number as a key to cosmic order. This was not a case of one culture copying another, but a magnificent example of convergent intellectual evolution. Different civilizations gazing at the same sky, each found their own unique way to tell its story, to find their place within its vast turning wheel. Yet the great libraries of Rome fell silent. As Europe entered its so-called Dark Ages, the intricate celestial science of the Greeks and Romans, the work of Ptolemy, risked being lost to fire, rot, and forgetting. The light of this knowledge did not go out, however. It was carried east, where it found new guardians in the flourishing cities of the Islamic world. While European monasteries preserved fragments, it was Islamic scholars in Baghdad, Damascus, and Persia who undertook a monumental project of preservation and reinvention. They scoured the known world for ancient manuscripts, translating the entire works of Ptolemy, along with countless other Greek and Persian texts, into Arabic. They did not merely copy these works, they tested them, corrected their astronomical tables, and built upon them with brilliant new observations. The Almagest Ptolemy's great star catalogue was refined and expanded. These scholars gave us the astrolabe, a sophisticated device for mapping the stars, and they gave stars the Arabic names we still use today, like Betelgeuse and Aldebaran. Astrology was inseparable from astronomy, a respected science they called the science of the judgments of the stars. It was a golden age of cosmic inquiry, all happening while Europe remained largely in the dark. So how did this enriched and expanded knowledge ever find its way back? The bridge was built in the sun-drenched cities of Al-Andalus, the Moorish kingdom in Spain. In cities like Toledo and Cordoba, a unique collaboration unfolded. Christian, Jewish, and Muslim scholars worked side by side in translation teams, converting these vast Arabic libraries back into Latin. It was like a dam breaking. After centuries of absence, the complete works of Ptolemy, now augmented with centuries of Islamic scholarship, flooded back into European universities. The zodiac had returned, but it was no longer a pagan relic. It was now a cutting-edge science, and it immediately began to reshape European thought. Physicians, for instance, embraced a practice known as iatromathematics. They believed the positions of the planets and zodiac signs governed different parts of the human body. Aries ruled the head, so you would never perform surgery on a patient's head when the moon was passing through Aries, fearing excessive bleeding. The entire human form was a microcosm mapped onto the macrocosm of the zodiac wheel. This cosmic thinking infused the literature of the time, from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales to the works of Dante, who wove intricate astrological symbolism into the very architecture of his Divine Comedy. The stars were back, not as omens for emperors, but as a fundamental part of a newly rediscovered rational universe. This grand revival, however, was about to collide head-on with a new and revolutionary force, one that would challenge the very premise that the Earth stood at the center of this cosmic dance. That collision of ideas came with the thunderous name of Copernicus. His radical proposal that the Earth revolved around the Sun and not the other way around did not immediately destroy astrology. In fact, it created a paradox that defined the Renaissance mind. For thinkers like the Danish nobleman Tycho Brahe, astronomy and astrology were two sides of the same golden coin. He built Uraniborg, a sprawling castle observatory, not just to map the stars with unprecedented accuracy, but to better understand their influence. Tycho meticulously calculated horoscopes for European royalty, seeing no contradiction between his precise measurements of planetary movements and his belief in their power to shape human destiny. His assistant, Johannes Kepler, took this even further. Kepler used Tycho's data to discover the elliptical orbits of the planets, laws of motion that are a cornerstone of modern physics. Yet he also cast hundreds of horoscopes for patrons to fund his research. For Kepler, the universe was a manifestation of divine geometry, and if God had written his laws in the language of mathematics, then surely the patterns of the stars held a coded message for humanity. This was not a conflict between science and superstition, but a unified search for meaning in a newly reordered cosmos. And this cosmic worldview was not confined to lonely observatories. It was painted on the walls of Europe's most magnificent buildings. Walk into the Palazzo della Regina in Padua, Italy, and you gaze up at a breathtaking fresco covering thousands of square feet. It is a complete astrological calendar depicting the 12 zodiac signs, their associated planets, and the human activities they governed, from farming to commerce. This was public art, a civic reminder that the city's daily life was intimately tied to the celestial cycles. Even churches, which officially condemned astrological determinism, were filled with zodiac mosaics and carvings. They appeared in the floors of cathedrals like San Miniato al Monte in Florence, a silent acknowledgement that the heavens, in all their perceived complexity, still reflected the glory of the Creator. The zodiac was woven into the very fabric of Renaissance life, a system so deeply embedded in art, science, and daily routine that it seemed as real as the ground beneath their feet. But this profound integration could not last forever. A new age of reason was dawning, one that would seek to purge the universe of its hidden influences and symbolic meanings. But that unified vision of a cosmos filled with meaning could not withstand the new tools of science. When Galileo pointed his telescope at the heavens, he saw not the perfect crystalline spheres of ancient tradition, but a messy, dynamic, and utterly physical reality. He observed moons orbiting Jupiter and the cratered, imperfect face of our own moon. These were not mere lights in the sky, they were worlds governed by the same physical laws as a falling apple here on Earth. This was the true beginning of the schism. Isaac Newton then provided the final mathematical key, his law of universal gravitation. He demonstrated that the same force that pulled an apple to the ground also kept the moon in its orbit around the Earth and the planets circling the sun. The cosmos was a vast, predictable machine, its motions explained by physics, not by the whims of celestial deities. There was no need for the planets to push or pull on human souls with mystical influences. Gravity did all the work with silent, mathematical elegance. Astronomy had found its power in prediction and physical law, and it began to distance itself from its older, symbolic twin. The stargazer split into two distinct figures, the astronomer, who studied what the stars were, and the astrologer, who pondered what they might mean. This was a painful, intellectual divorce. The very institutions that had once nurtured both, like the royal courts and universities, now began to reject astrology as an embarrassing relic. It was increasingly branded a pseudoscience, a collection of archaic superstitions with no place in a rational, enlightened world. The universe had become a clockwork, and the clockmaker had no need to write our daily horoscopes in its gears. So how could a system so thoroughly debunked by modern science not only survive but flourish in the centuries that followed? Its resilience lies in something far deeper than astronomical fact. The universe had become a vast, silent machine, but the human heart still longed for its story. Astrology did not die with the Enlightenment. It simply retreated from the halls of science and found a new, powerful home in the daily newspaper. In August 1930, a British journalist named R.H. Naylor published a birth chart for the newborn Princess Margaret in the Sunday Express. The public response was so overwhelming that the editor asked for a follow-up, a weekly horoscope column for everyone. Naylor's first mass horoscope was for the sign of Libra, and with that, a cosmic system once reserved for kings and pharaohs was delivered to millions of doorsteps every Sunday morning. This was the great democratization of the stars. No longer did you need to understand complex tables or hire an expensive astrologer. You could simply read your paragraph and feel a direct personal connection to the cosmos. These columns stripped away the complex fatalism of the past, replacing predictions of doom and empire with gentle advice about romance, career, and personal growth. The focus shifted from what the stars would do to you to what you could do for yourself with a little celestial insight. It was a brilliant simplification, transforming an ancient science of destiny into a tool for modern self-reflection. This new, accessible form of astrology then exploded into the counterculture of the 1960s and 70s. It became a symbol of rebellion against rigid, materialistic norms, a way to explore spirituality and identity outside traditional religion. You would see zodiac symbols on protest posters, emblazoned on tie-dye t-shirts, and woven into the lyrics of popular songs. It was no longer just a parlor game. It was part of a cultural language, a shared code for a generation seeking meaning. Today, that language has found its ultimate amplifier in social media. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok have created a global 24/7 horoscope community. Memes about a Mercury retrograde ruining your group chat or a full moon in Scorpio bringing emotional intensity make the ancient symbols feel urgently relevant to daily life. The archetypes of the signs are now used as a shorthand for personality types, a way for people to understand themselves and connect with others who share their celestial traits. This modern interpretation is a world away from the Babylonian fear of celestial omens. We have taken a system built to read the will of the gods for kings and turned it into a mirror for the individual soul, a vibrant, ever-evolving conversation about who we are and how we relate to the universe and to each other. The stones themselves whisper of an obsession with celestial order. Scattered across the globe are monuments that prove our ancestors were not just stargazers but master celestial engineers. This is the domain of archaeoastronomy, a science that deciphers the astronomical knowledge encoded in ancient ruins. It reveals a deep, pre-literate understanding of the cosmos, a universal language written in stone and sunlight. Consider the Great Circle of Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain in England. For centuries, it was seen as a mysterious pagan temple, but we now know its massive trilithons, those giant doorways of stone, were precisely arranged to frame the rising sun on the summer solstice. On that longest day, the sun would crest the horizon directly in the center of a key stone, flooding the inner circle with a blade of light. This was not a coincidence, it was a colossal calendar, a way to mark the turning of the year with breathtaking accuracy. Across the Atlantic, another civilization performed a similar feat with stunning elegance. At Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, the ancestral Puebloan people carved a spiral petroglyph onto a high cliff face. For most of the year, it is just a curious symbol, but at noon on the summer solstice, a slender dagger of sunlight pierces the center of the spiral. As the days shorten toward winter, the dagger of light splits, perfectly framing the spiral on either side. This sun dagger is a masterpiece of passive observation, a complex solar calendar etched directly into the living rock. These sites predate the Babylonian Zodiac by millennia, yet they speak to the same fundamental human impulse. They are proof that long before we wrote myths about scorpions and archers in the stars, we were building landscapes in sacred conversation with the sun and moon. We were mapping time itself onto the earth, creating fixed points in a turning universe. This deep-seated need to find rhythm and predictability in the heavens made the invention of a portable, symbolic system like the zodiac almost inevitable. If you could not move the stone, you could always map the stars. This slow, majestic wobble of our planet is the key to the sky's greatest secret. Picture a spinning top just as it begins to slow down, its axis tracing a slow, lazy circle in the air. Earth does the very same thing. Our planet is not a perfect, steady spinner. It wobbles on its axis over a vast cycle of about 26,000 years. This wobble is called the precession of the equinoxes, and it means our North Star changes over millennia. The star we called Polaris was not always our guide, and in thousands of years it will not be again. This imperceptible drift has a profound effect on our view of the zodiac. Because of this wobble, the backdrop of stars against which the sun rises on the first day of spring is not fixed. It slides backward very slowly through the constellations. When the Babylonian priests locked in their system over 2,000 years ago, the sun on the spring equinox was positioned in front of the constellation Aries. That is why Aries is the first sign of their zodiac. But today, due to that relentless precession, the sun on the first day of spring actually rises in the constellation Pisces. And in a few hundred more years, it will rise in the constellation of Aquarius, heralding the much-discussed age of Aquarius. This creates a fascinating split in meaning. Your sun sign in a Western horoscope is not based on where the sun actually is among the stars today. It is a symbolic marker, a seasonal placeholder that remains fixed to the calendar. So if you are a Taurus, your birthday arrives while the sun is technically passing through the stars of Aries. The sky has moved, but our symbolic map has stayed the same. This is not an error in the system, but rather a choice made long ago to anchor our lives to the reliable rhythm of the seasons, even as the cosmic stage behind the sun slowly, silently rotates. A central pillar of modern skepticism rests on a simple but powerful psychological phenomenon known as the Barnum effect. We are all remarkably prone to accepting vague, positive personality descriptions as uniquely accurate for ourselves. Think of a statement like, "You have a great need for other people to like and admire you," or "You pride yourself on being an independent thinker." These feel deeply personal, yet they are so general that they apply to almost everyone. This is the same mechanism that makes horoscopes so compelling. They offer a mirror that reflects back a flattering and universally relatable image. The language of astrology is often flexible enough to fit countless individual experiences, creating an illusion of perfect personal insight where none may objectively exist. Beyond psychology, the scientific community points to a fundamental and unanswered question: what is the physical mechanism? We understand the forces that govern the cosmos, gravity, and electromagnetism. The gravitational pull of the delivering doctor in the hospital room is astronomically stronger than the infinitesimal pull from Mars. There is no known force that could possibly transmit the specific, personality-shaping influences that astrology describes. This has led to a clear stance from major scientific bodies. The National Science Foundation, for instance, explicitly classifies astrology as a pseudoscience, noting its claims are not testable and cannot be verified by reliable evidence. Perhaps the most famous refutation came from a simple yet elegant experiment. In 1985, physicist Sean Carlson conducted a double-blind study published in the prestigious journal Nature. He had astrologers create natal charts for volunteers and then asked the volunteers to pick their own personality profile from a set of three, one being their own and the others being random. The result: the participants chose the correct chart at a rate no better than random chance. They were simply guessing. This rigorous test, designed with the astrologer's own input, demonstrated that even expert readings could not be consistently matched to the individuals they were meant to describe. So where does this leave us with a system that has captivated humanity for millennia? The scientific viewpoint sees a beautiful historical artifact, a testament to our innate desire to find patterns and stories in the world, but one that ultimately fails as a predictive or explanatory science. Yet its undeniable endurance suggests it fulfills a different, more human need altogether. Perhaps the most compelling reason for its survival lies not in the stars but within the human mind itself. Our brains are hardwired for narrative, desperate to weave disconnected events into a coherent story with meaning and purpose. This innate tendency is known as apophenia, the experience of seeing patterns or connections in random or meaningless data. It is why we see faces in the clouds or hear hidden messages when a record is played backward. The zodiac provides a pre-made, beautifully elaborate pattern for this very human instinct. It takes the chaotic, often random events of our lives and offers a template, a celestial story into which we can place our personal struggles, our relationships, and our hopes. It transforms a string of bad luck into a Mercury retrograde period, giving temporary disorder a name, a reason, and a predictable end date. This is profoundly comforting. It replaces the anxiety of a purposeless universe with a sense of order, a feeling that our lives are part of a larger, more poetic cosmic script. The zodiac's 12 archetypes act as powerful psychological mirrors. Each sign represents a cluster of universal human traits, from the courageous initiative of Aries to the compassionate idealism of Pisces. When we read about our sign, we are not receiving a scientific diagnosis, we are engaging in a form of self-reflection. The descriptions are often flexible enough to allow for personal interpretation, enabling us to focus on the parts that resonate and ignore those that do not. This process helps us construct our identity, giving us a vocabulary to understand and articulate our own complexities. It answers the fundamental human question, who am I? In a world of nearly infinite choice and constant social comparison, having a symbolic anchor for your personality can be a tremendous source of comfort and belonging. This framework extends beyond the self into our social worlds. Knowing the sun signs of friends, family, or partners provides a shared language for navigating relationships. It offers a generous lens through which to view another person's behavior. A partner's stubbornness can be reframed as Taurian loyalty. A friend's emotional volatility becomes a deep scorpionic intensity. This does not excuse negative traits, but it can make them feel more understandable, even predictable, softening the edges of human conflict with a layer of cosmic context. It creates instant camaraderie and a sense of shared identity, a quick way to feel connected in an increasingly fragmented world. So while a telescope reveals the physical truth of the planets, the zodiac endures because it speaks to a deeper, more intimate truth about our need for story, for meaning, and for connection in the vast and silent universe. So many threads of this ancient story remain tantalizingly frayed. We are left with profound mysteries that still challenge historians and archaeologists today. Why did cultures from the Mayans to the Chinese, completely isolated from one another, develop such intricate celestial maps, each built around that powerful, recurring number 12? Was this a case of parallel evolution, the human mind independently recognizing a fundamental cosmic rhythm, or does it hint at a single, lost origin point, a forgotten civilization whose astronomical knowledge scattered across the globe in a forgotten age? We may never know. Then there is the question of lost meaning. We inherited the Babylonian zodiac through Greek and Roman filters. How much of the original Mesopotamian intent was lost in translation? When a Greek scholar looked at the cuneiform symbol for a constellation, did he truly grasp the nuance of the Babylonian god it represented, or did he simply see a shape that reminded him of a hero from his own myths? We have reconstructed this system from fragments, but the full depth of its original symbolism, the precise reasons for certain associations, may be buried forever under the sands of Iraq. History is not a closed book. A single new discovery, an unread clay tablet in a museum basement, or a fresh excavation at a site like G. Cyrillic letter 4Re7Bekli Teep could completely reshape our understanding of why we first looked up and saw our own stories written in the stars. The greatest mystery is not in the past but in the future, waiting for the next clue to be unearthed. From the dusty plains of ancient Babylon to the glowing screen of your smartphone, the story of the zodiac is a testament to one of humanity's most profound and enduring creations. This system has weathered the rise and fall of empires, the birth of modern science, and the digital revolution, not because it is a perfect science, but because it answers a timeless human need. It is a bridge across centuries, connecting our modern search for self with the ancient desire to find our small, significant place within a vast and mysterious cosmos. The symbols themselves have been translated and transformed, from the fearsome lion of Gilgamesh to the heroic Nemean lion of Greek myth, yet their core purpose remains. They are a mirror reflecting our own hopes, fears, and complexities back at us through the language of the stars. This celestial map is our shared inheritance, a cross-cultural masterpiece of storytelling that proves we have always looked upward to understand ourselves. So the next time you look up at the stars, remember you are gazing at the same constellations that inspired our ancestors thousands of years ago. What do they mean to you? Let us know your thoughts and your sign in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more journeys into history's greatest mystery.